to my channel and thank you so much for being here. Today is going to be another informational video all about under eye area, maybe what you might be doing wrong, some tips and tricks, some more advanced techniques. So if you want to know more about that, hit the subscribe button, share this video with somebody you think might like it, and let's do it. All right, so I'm going to scoot you in when we do application, so don't worry. But today I wanted to kind of break down this kind of elusive under eye area. And this is especially for people that are really 40 plus, but I can't apply to everyone really. I mean, even in your 20s and 30s, a lot of people can have a lot of texture, fine lines, problems with concealer, creasing, not wearing well, breaking down throughout the day, looking cakey, how to get the right coverage, things like that. So it's going to be a very kind of instructional, a lot of information, so please bear with me. I hope to really impart some information, maybe some aha moments for you guys, and you know, some really great takeaways. So let's first start with prepping the under eye. So the under eye area, whether it's dark circles, creases, bags, concealer not wearing appropriately, or the right coverage, all of those things can really be helped or assisted by the proper prep of the under eye area. Now, one of my favorite things to do with clients while they're getting their hair done, or maybe while I'm prepping the skin, is to use under eye patches. Now, pick your favorite. Pixie makes some great ones. Elle, Tatcha, of course, Peter Thomas Roth, SK2. Basically, there's a gamut of them out in the universe, okay? So you gotta pick your favorite. Lemieux has some that is my favorite. I actually just ran out of them, and so I'll show you what I mean. When I say under eye patches, people go, what do you mean? So honestly, I'm just taking them out of the package right now, so I'm sorry. I just know these work really, really well, okay? These are the patches, okay? What they do is they go under your eyes, they stick there, and what they do for the most part is give hydration. Now, what hydration is going to do the under eye area is going to plump it, feed it, and give it the nourishment that it needs. Now, the thing to remember though is once you put eye patches on, you do need to let that kind of sink in and do what it's supposed to. So I really recommend using eye patches at night as a support system to your nighttime routine. Of course, if you're having an event or something special, you can put them on because hopefully you'll have more time to get ready. But the second most important thing is to really understand your skin type. Your skin type is important because some people are super dry around here, flaky, dehydrated, some people are normal, some people are actually really quite oily in this area. Now, when we're talking about this area, we're also talking about the T-zone because this is where that T-zone is. So if you have a lot of oiliness here, you're gonna need to prep the under eye area very differently than you would if you were dehydrated. I, for the most part, recommend using a lightweight eye cream during the day. If you are more dehydrated, flaky, things like that, of course you can use a little bit more of a richer eye cream, but my philosophy is really making sure you take care of that under eye skin at night so that during the day you can wear lighter products, and so everything will sit better on top of it. So for example, what I have been using lately is something new. These two are new to me. This is the Reboot Serum from QRX Labs. They just sent this to me a little bit ago. It is beautiful. It is a serum, lightweight, gives just enough hydration that makeup goes on beautifully over it. It's a serum and it has caffeine in it, so it's great for you know, depuffing and dark circles. It also has hyaluronic acid. It does have retinol in it, niacinamide, ferulic acid, and rosehip oil. So this is what I have been using. I obviously use an SPF during the day, but I have not been using this during the day. I've been using this during the night. But this is a beautiful one if you will make sure that you do have SPF on over that if you choose to wear it during the day. But I wanted to bring it up because it's but what I'm going to show you today, what I'm using, my another new one, is the eye serum by Is Clinical. And I will apply it now. The reason being is I am normal under my eyes, okay? I don't have super dry under eyes, because I do eye patches almost every other night, as well as I give a little bit richer eye cream in the evening. And I just tap it in. You really want to make sure when you are using an eye cream that you tap that in, that becomes a second skin, that it's not sitting on top of the skin. If you have a lot of problems with your your concealer creasing, it's usually either your application or the stuff you have underneath it is too heavy and it's not absorbing into the skin. When we're talking about concealer creasing and not doing what it's supposed to, it's because it's not able to adhere to the skin because there's something being a barrier to it. So that's why I really recommend making sure that you use a nice lightweight eye serum. Also, of course, I have my whole thing of eye creams here. But you also know that Biossance is one of my favorite ones to use during the day as well. Fantastic. Really, really, really beautiful. All right, so now we've talked about prepping the under eyes. It's super important to make sure you prep. Now, if you are oily, okay, if you are oily combination skin, try using an eye primer underneath the eyes, just a little bit, just exactly what you would do up here. My favorite one right now is the Makeup Forever Step 1 Base Eye and Lip Primer. It's really good. You just take a little bit and you tap it underneath the eye. I don't ever really do that because I am more dry to normal, and it just will add too much drying capacity to that area and make everything look worse, okay? All right, let's scoot you in. So now you can really see I have some darkness under my eyes right here. And, but again, for concealer creasing, I'm not the super best candidate for it because I don't have super fine lines at the moment. I've been having Botox for many years, and so it's kept these lines at bay, as well as I'm using a new tool that I think is actually helping. So let's talk about how to layer your color correctors, your concealers, things like that, so that they do not crease. I really enjoy color correcting palettes. This one is by NYX. You can also do your other NYX, which is just the peach corrector. Your Color Science Total Eye is perfection because it has SPF 35. It's also a color corrector. And of course, one of my holy grails, which is the Urban Decay's color correctors. Now I'm just going to, just for sake of argument, I am going to use this palette right here because I want to show you how to do it. The reason why I like this is because it has a peach one, which is actually for deeper skin tones. It has a lighter peach one right here, which I can actually combine the two to make my custom color for underneath my eyes or a client. MAC makes one just like this too, and a couple other companies do. And yellow. Yellow is going to be for something that's a little bit more on the red, so any redness on the face. Peach, in varying degrees, is going to be linked to brown, purples, greenish, blues underneath the eyes, or pretty much anywhere on the face. So you want to pick the color corrector that is appropriate for your situation. For me, I have this basically, I'm super dark right here. So that is going to be more on that bluish, purplish side. And then same kind of right here. Okay, so now when you're applying a color corrector, another big culprit for creasing is that you are just slapping too much on. And I want to really kind of simplify this a little bit because it can get pretty complicated. In my many years of being a makeup artist, I have dealt with so many different types of eyes in the world that I'm able to customize things as I work with clients. But I want to make sure that you guys are empowered because it can get kind of confusing. So I'm going to make my own custom color corrector. So I'm going to take by the way, this is a tiny little beauty blender sponge. You can use a brush, you can use a big beauty blender, whatever. I just happened to find this in my drawer and I thought, oh, you know what, this would be good to use just today because we're doing the eye area. It's better to use tools that are appropriate in size for the area that you're working in, okay? So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to take a little bit of this color and a little bit of this color and kind of just make my own little concoction. Now I'm only going to apply this where I need it, and I'm just using enough, and I'm just using this in tapping motions. And then I'm going to go in with my finger and start to tap this out. You can also use the other side of the beauty blender and just tap this out. My pressure is very light, very light, and I'm just pushing this color corrector in and making it a second skin. And the goal here is to have it minimized. So if you go in with full strength color corrector so that you just don't see anything anymore, and then you add concealer over it or foundation over it, you're gonna end up with a big old mess because it's just gonna be so many heavy layers. So working in thin, really effective layers is going to be the best approach in my opinion, I should say. So you can see how much that brightened this up. and took away this discoloration. I'm gonna leave one side undone and one side done so you can see and get the kind of full gist. Now, if you happen to have a little bit more darkness out here, again, don't do it like a full swipe. Just take it, I just did the same color, and I'm just gonna tap that in just a little bit, and then use your finger. Some of us have redness, which I do from allergies, on the corner of our eye. So I will take a color corrector out on the outside corner of my eye as well. Okay, so do you see that? Again, use your favorite brand of whatever. Just make sure that you're picking the appropriate color corrector. Now, if you are deeper skinned, you're gonna need a little bit of a richer or deeper orange or peach to do the same kind of discoloration on the face. All right, so there we are. That is our first step in making sure that our layers are really thin and it's strategically placed, okay? That's really, I can't stress that enough. So making sure you prep the area with a eye cream or eye serum that is appropriate for your concern, and then using a color corrector that is in a fine layer. Now, if you need more, so say for example, this didn't cover up all of your discoloration. You go back in with another thin layer using the warmth of your hand and tapping this out, making sure that it is really a second skin. Your fingers around your eyes, for the most part, is gonna be your best tool. All right, so now let's get into some concealers. If you are super dry and dehydrated, you are gonna need to pick a concealer that is more moisturizing, more hydrating. You really need to be dry to have that kind of concealer. I'll just be very honest with you. So now, if you are dry and dehydrated, using a heavy drying concealer is really not gonna be the most amazing tool to choose for that skin type. I really enjoy using thinner consistency, more hydrating concealers. The problem is the more hydrating your concealer is, it's way more prone to crease and to move throughout the day. That's unfortunately just the nature of it. So a lot of you guys are using these very rich, nourishing, and, you know, for example, where is it? Okay. All right, so you know that I really enjoy the Bye Bye Under Eyes concealers from IT Cosmetics. I do think they are really fantastic, really superior, but they are very, very hydrating. And you really need to make sure you apply a small, thin layer when you're using these. Literally, they should be reserved for more mature, very, very dry, dehydrated skin. If you have any fine lines around here or even a bag underneath here, and you try to apply a really heavy and moisturizing concealer, it's going to crease. So you are going to need to be cognizant of that, maybe tapping that out, you know, throughout the day, or maybe taking, you know, a little edge of your, you know, your sponge and just kind of touching that out, the little crease there. But we all have, you know, when we smile, we have lines underneath our eyes, everybody does. And so anything you're going to put under here, it's prone to move. So these tips are just to reduce that. One of my very favorites is the Glossier Stretch Concealer. I have used this for years. It takes so little, but your mascara will smear with it because it has natural oils. I believe it has, in the Glossier one, I believe it has avocado oil in it. So it has these kind of natural hydrating properties, and it is going to crease, and your mascara might run with it unless you use like a tubing mascara or a waterproof mascara. Another great one to use is going to be, which is going to go into the next category too, but is the Tarte's Aqua Sea. Is that what it's called? Tarte Rainforest of the Sea Aqua Concealer. This is fantastic. So those are the concealers that I would recommend for somebody that is more dry, but I wanted to point them out because you all are looking for a concealer that's going to be rich, hydrating, moisturizing, making you feel so good, but it's also going to inhibit and, you know, the wearing of your concealer, okay? Yes, you can set it, but again, those natural oils and all of those really lovely, creamy, yummy concealers, when you put powder on top of that bad boy, you're going to have to do it A, strategically, and B, not very much, and it sometimes can look cakey. So I wish I had a better answer for you on that. I'm going to use, for right now, I am going to use something that's in the middle. So I love Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Away. I think it's fantastic. I've already color corrected, so all I need is just a little bit of coverage and a little bit of just slight illumination. So this one has like an illuminating property to it. Makeup Forever makes one. There's a couple other companies that make, obviously YSL's Touche Éclat is an under eye brightener. These are not, those are not concealers. So, but these things have a shift to them. And this is what I recommend for people that are, of course, dry, normal to combination. Oily, we will get to in just 1 second. But this is generally what I use on every client, and I'll show you why. I'm going to take a little bit of foundation and apply that to my skin. And I will show you how far I bring up my foundation. So I'm just going to tap this on. Okay, so here we are. Great. So now I'm taking whatever is left on my sponge, and I'm just kind of barely touching the orbital bone on my eye. Now, I don't bring up my concealer all the way to my lash line, because think of it, you have a layer of eye cream or eye serum, you have probably some sort of color corrector, now you have foundation, then you have concealer, and then you have powder, and it just has a tendency to get super cakey unless you're super young and have no fine lines and wrinkles or anything underneath the eyes, which even if you're super, super young, everybody has something underneath here. So the reason why I do bring this up here just a little bit is because it allows me to see how much concealer I actually need. All right, so now we're ready to apply concealer. You will see me sometimes, obviously, just go in full strength with the concealer. If you're just starting out or really having problems with the concealer, try to do it this way. It might be kind of a game changer for you. I'm going to use the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Away Concealer. You can also use Maybelline's Instant Age Rewind for this, one of my faves. You can also use CoverGirl's Simply Ageless Instant Fix Concealer. These are lightweight and kind of have a slight hydration to them. And they're really, really great for, on average, most people's under eyes. In the Magic Away, I use 2. And what I'm going to do is, you can do this also too with a brush if you want to, like apply it with a brush. I'm going to go right over that color corrector in tapping motions, just like this. Tap, 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 color corrector, tap, tap, tap. Okay? Again, and you know what I mean, there's no need to do this big like thing underneath your eyes. You can take your finger or you can take your little sponge. I prefer to do a little sponge sometimes. It just depends on how I'm feeling that day. Just try both ways and see what you think. And then whatever I've left on my finger or my sponge, I'm just going to bring all the way out. And see how I went in with just a very little amount? Doing it in these sheer layers is going to be epic for you. It's going to make sure that you don't have as much, you have as least creasing as possible. So now here we are. And I also, by the way, use 3 sometimes too. But we're going to do it a little bit more because I want just a little bit more coverage just right here. And I'm just going to go again in that tapping motions. And again, you can just use your finger too. Your finger is totally fine. Just make sure your pressure is really light. You're using your ring finger and you're just making it melt into the skin. Now, making sure that you bring a little bit of that concealer. You can take your, I like to take my foundation sponge and just go over that line where I have applied the concealer. And this way it'll look more blended and you won't see that kind of, you know, line of demarcation. All right, so there we are. So you can actually see the difference between this eye and this eye. Now, for me, it's a personal preference. I like to be a little bit brighter under the eyes. That's just who I am. I will adjust it, whoever the client is, I will adjust it to whatever they. So if you don't like a super bright under eye, which I don't call this super bright, but it is definitely a little bit brighter because it has, can you see the light reflecting qualities in that concealer? And it's just going to give a blurring effect and a diffusion to that under eye. So that's just my personal preference for me, okay? It can be whatever you want for you. But this is how I prefer my under eyes. And there we go, okay? Now, if you are more oily, like if you are truly, truly oily around the eyes, they make quite a bit of, you know, drier concealers. For example, the Jouer one, which I can actually use, but the Jouer one is fantastic. The Jouer Essential High Coverage Liquid Concealer, of course, you know, Tarte's Shape Tape, you know, Laura Mercier's. This one is fantastic. It's the Flawless Fusion Long Wear Concealer. It's great. And those are some really great ones. I can actually pretty much wear all of these, but I reserve them for more special occasions. But those are what I would recommend if you are more oily, because they really dry down very, very quickly, and they will help with that kind of oil breaking through your concealer because of the alcohols in them and because of some other flash formers and stuff that they have inside different formulas. Okay, so I hope that this is making sense. Now, if you're like me and you say to yourself, well, I really like where it is right now, so I personally would stop and I would apply some powder. But if you want a little bit more coverage in certain areas, you can take something like, one of my favorites is the NARS Long Wear Concealer, or the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer, and you can tap just a little bit here. So for example, you need a little bit more coverage. Take your Dry Beauty little tool or your sponge, whatever you want, and you can tap this out, and you can actually use your finger as well. So some people have a lot of darkness in here, and one concealer or one formula isn't necessarily going to take care of this because of the darkness. And in order for it to get and to look seamless and almost unnoticeable, you have to do these light layers, and sometimes you have to use multiple types of concealers unless you want to go in with a full coverage concealer, which if you are more dry like me, it's just going to look dry and cakey and, in my opinion, not as polished. Okay. So there we are. So you can see the difference between the two. Yes, I have used a couple different concealers, but they have lasted me a really long time. I have used very little. And again, I'll get up so you can see that what it looks like. Okay. So, and actually in person, this looks a little less highlighted. It's my ring light that I have on right now that's kind of electrifying this area. But in person, it doesn't look, you know, too light. But you can see all of my darkness in here is now reasonably covered up. Okay, so now when you set this with powder, if you are more dry or normal, you know, for me, my staple is the Hourglass, okay? I've been using it in diffused light recently. You can absolutely use it on a damp beauty blender and really push it in and make that into a second skin. You can absolutely use a brush. This brush is by Sigma. It's the High Cheekbone Highlight brush. It's really good. You can also use a powder, a matte powder. The milk powder is fantastic. I mean, there's so many powders that you can use. But I would say if you are more oily to combination, and you already are going to have this beautiful glow to your skin. I don't necessarily know if a kind of a luminizing powder is going to be the best fit for your under eye area. I would probably choose to go with something that's a little bit more matte, okay? But for me, I like a little bit of glow, so you can use the Hourglass. Also, the Haze powder from Stellar is stellar. It's fantastic. And maybe today I'll show you how to use the Haze powder. So it's right here. I'm going to take a little bit, and please, you guys, do not pack on the powder. We just talked about this, how to set the whole face for long wearing foundation and concealer. That you just, in my opinion, you don't need a ton of powder. And then I'm just going to tap, see how I just tapped out a dry side of, or the a side I haven't used of my beauty sponge. You want to make sure everything is nice and flat and there's no creases when you set. And we're just going to tap, and I'll show you how to do it this way. I'm just going to tap with a brush. And this is the Haze powder. And that's it. And there you go. All right, so let's kind of round some things out and give you some extra tips. So first thing is obviously to remember to really prep the under eye area to the way that works for you, hoping that you treat it at night a little bit more richly than you would in the daytime, so everything can go on flawlessly and seamlessly. So the second thing is picking a color corrector and using it strategically if you need one. If you do not need a color corrector, please do not add that extra layer of color correction. You just don't need it. So really making sure you use it though strategically, only where you need it and in the smallest layers possible. Again, you will get really quick at this as you kind of practice, but this is just more for like a beginner, somebody that really needs a little bit more time and attention on this topic. It's going to take you a minute, so please bear with yourself. Please be patient with yourself. You will get it, I promise, okay? The third is making sure you pick a formula of concealer that fits your needs. So oily, you're gonna need probably something that's a little bit more matte. Normal, you're gonna need something that you can wear probably both, like, you know, something that's super rich, something that's just kind of normal like skin-like, something that's a little bit more matte. And then dehydrated skin, making sure that you pick a formula that's going to work for you, but knowing the more rich and hydrating and moisturizing a concealer is, the more it's apt to crease. And if you are more of that drier, you know, more mature under eyes, usually it is a more drier area. So you're going to use a full strength, you know, full coverage drying concealer. It's really going to make those fine lines and wrinkles be a little bit more prominent. So finding the balance for you that really works. And then again, using your concealer in strategic areas. Again, you've seen me kind of layer on concealer very quickly because I've done this for a long time, so I know how to blend it out and such. But again, making sure that you don't use it everywhere. You saw I used concealer, just the Charlotte Tilbury, just right here, and then I blended it out. I did use a dry sponge. You can use a damp sponge if you want to. You can use your fingers. Fingers usually are going to be your best bet because they're going to press it into the skin and make it to be a second skin. And then you can just go over it with a sponge after just to kind of, you know, blend things out. Fourth is if you want a little bit more coverage, using a little bit heavier concealer, but just in the areas that you need it. And they usually aren't in creases. It's usually right here. And that's usually where people have halos, or that's where the bag kind of cuts in. And that's appropriate to use a little bit higher of a higher coverage concealer there so that it brings that optical illusion of that popping out. And then the last tip will be, of course, setting it. If you don't need to set your concealer, please don't. I mean, honestly, please don't. But using a little bit of powder for the most part is going to be a good idea in general. Again, I will link some of my videos below. Please go and look in the description box. I will link all of my eye videos below so you can just start to kind of go through them, and they'll give you a really comprehensive, well, I hope they will, give you a really comprehensive way of approaching the eye area and making sure that there are some different tips and techniques that might work for you. Also using something like, you heard me talk about this recently, these are the CO Beauty pads. Now, they make, so you know I use this one, you can't really see it, but I use this one, which is the neck, and then I have a décolleté one. But they have eye ones. So they have eye ones that you can wear at night. Now, you can't wear eye cream or anything underneath it, which is okay. But you can wear them at night, and that will also prevent the area from becoming further damaged by sleeping, you know, on our faces and things of that nature. So that's something else that you can try also, just to be proactive in helping that area be a little less, you know, a little less prone to creasing and things of that nature. So thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it. I hope that this helps you. Again, check the description box for more videos, and thank you so much. If you also like these videos that are, you know, a little more instructional, please give me a thumbs up so that I know to do a lot more, and I'll see you on the next one. Lots of love from me to you. Bye, loves.